Think of really high-end services or things that are limited to folks with high means are kind of being democratized with AI. Traditionally, tutoring and services and all these things, you can use agents to give you a lot of that value today.
Ankur Jain is an AI and software investor
who has previously worked for Facebook, Google, and NASA.
There's different kind of forces which AI is pushing, and there's so many different paths you can take. My advice is...
Welcome back to Decoded. My name's Alfie Whattam, and this is the show where I speak to experts about what it takes to build great teams and companies. Make sure that you click the follow or subscribe button for more great content like this, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. So, Ankur, you're an investor at Pear, which has backed DoorDash and Gusto and Vanta and so many other massively successful startups. So what's the number one thing that you look for when you're deciding to invest in a startup?
It's a big question. I would say that ultimately, I think above all else, right? I mean, there's so many things that you could chop up and you could say, right, these things are important. Everything from velocity to team to, the market and everything. But I think ultimately what kind of trumps everything else and beyond all else. For an example, I wasn't at Pear when we invested in DoorDash, but I hear the story so many times.
Yeah.
Of Mar, our managing partner, she met Tony and she, met the DoorDash team. She describes this kind of feeling of being able to see their vision and kind of see that come true in the future. And I think that, ability to really paint a vivid picture and really kind of, convince somebody else this is what the world is going to look like and this is why we're going to win. I think that trait that founders have is incredible, and it oftentimes, signifies that there's something incredible in the works. And I mean, I've been fortunate enough to have that feeling as an investor a few times, but I think it's hard to get there, but it happens sometimes.
Where do you think that vision comes from? Do you think people are born with it? Do you think it can be developed over time? Like, not many people can have a vision and then create a reality distortion field to convince others, whether that's early employees to join when there's no money, or investors when it's an idea and some crazy strategy and there's no product. Like, where do you think that vision comes from, and how do you think that happens?
Yeah. I think you nailed it in terms of, what that vision can also do, right? Because for employees, that's how you hire people, right? Convince them this is the best company. For investors, that's how you convince them to invest in the company. This is the best company. For customers, that's how you sell, right? This is the best product. I don't think that vision, you're born with that at all. I think this is absolutely something that, you develop over time. And I think it comes from really strong personal conviction, right? Because if you want to convince somebody else, first you have to convince yourself of that. And you have to really deeply, fundamentally believe in whatever you're selling. So for an example, right, I think you can have, incredible domain expertise in an area. So you've been working in an industry, you've seen the problems, and then you go out and feel, I'm going to build a company to solve exactly this. And I know how it's done. I've seen this before. You might be completely wrong, but at least you kind of have that strong vision and you have the idea of this is my hypothesis about the world and what it's going to look like. And I'm going to go out there and do as much as I can to make this come true and to test this out and to validate this. And nothing's going to stop me.
I can resonate with that very well. I was in recruiting for a decade. Now I have a recruiting AI startup. So that domain knowledge really fills me with confidence and self-belief when I'm speaking to people, because I know what I'm talking about. It's not like it's a brand new idea or theory and that sort of thing, right? Okay. Yeah. Before you were in VC, you launched an ed tech app, which was used by over 70,000 students. What's your biggest advice for someone that's looking to build a startup? Because most VCs that I speak to, that they're incredible, but not all of them have built a project themselves or had a company and that sort of thing. So as somebody that's been on both sides of the table, what is your advice for someone that is right now listening to this? They're like a entrepreneur. They have an idea. They really want to build it. What would you say to them?
My advice is start building. I would always I think a lot of kind of how we think about building things is rooted in kind of this, this process that we have where we believe, first you got to come up with a really good idea and, find the right problem to build. Then you kind of got to plan, how are you going to build it? Who are you going to build it with? And then you kind of get to building it, then you get to selling it after that. But I think nowadays, right, we've seen that founders are flipping the script, right? I mean, you can sell something before you even build it. You can find customers, or you can, use the newest cutting edge tools and build something really, really cool and post it online and have folks kind of engage with these things. So, right, there's so many different paths you can take. And I think my advice is, if you're at least starting on something and you're moving in some direction, you're building something, you can get some feedback on that, see if it's working, see what's not working. And then also kind of generally just find the smartest people and talk to them and find out what they're excited about and work with them, right? Because ultimately, I think that like it's very easy to kind of get in this, also founders get in their head and kind of think, building so-and-so thing, but ultimately the most important thing is finding an incredible team to work with and build that vision to life, because at some point, right, it's not just going to be you, it's going to be other folks that you're building things with, and you want to be working with folks that you really, really trust and want to work with, right?
In a world where building that MVP is easier than ever with Replit and Lovable and Bolt and so on, do you think there'll be more or less developers 5 years from now?
I think there's going to be so many more, and this is, I think, one of the kind of best, one of the kind of the earliest and best, I would say, changes that we've seen from kind of how AI is reshaping kind of, right, folks and the way that, even people, education to a large degree, right? Because if you look at the past couple of years, development and kind of startups and software were largely kind of limited to folks with highly technical backgrounds, right? You study computer science, you study some area, then you go out and build something, and maybe you're working with some folks that have domain expertise, but it's kind of limited, right? To ultimately, you have to have some deep technical knowledge. But what we started to see, and obviously we're not there yet, but we're moving towards that space where folks, who don't have that, but maybe have some other domain expertise, right, are getting to that point where it's easier to spin things up and it's easier to do these things, right? So, we're going to get to a point where 5 years from now, right, there's going to be some, I don't know if it's Lovable, I don't know if it's Replit, but there's going to be some platform where you're going to be able to build a business, build something that's really high fidelity, can actually be shipped to production, can actually, handle hundreds of thousands of users potentially in days.
Yeah.
That would be completely believable. And right, I think the coolest part about it is that access is going to be for much more people, right? For an example, people in my life that, tell me, how do you build these apps and stuff and do all this technical stuff? I have no idea to do this. Like my sister, I can totally see her in a couple of years spinning up some app and being like, I did this. And, she's, I think her self-described kind of knowledge of computer science is AP computer science from high school.
Okay.
And people with backgrounds like that are going to be able to build incredible things, and it's super exciting.
This is a quick message to tell you about my company, Alpha AI. We built Lisa, the world's first AI-powered recruiter who screens candidates for you on autopilot. You can make your recruitment process 10 times faster, 90% lower cost, and significantly improve the candidate experience, all with our AI agent for hiring. Learn more at welovealpha.com or click the link below in the description. And now, back to the episode. You talked a moment ago about the importance of team and really bringing people together to make that happen. But in 5 years from now, if your sister or anybody who's non-technical can build an app and potentially a business around that, the classic formula right now from a VC perspective and has been for the past really 20 years, 30 years, has been find 2 or 3 co-founders at pre-seed, somebody that can do sales, marketing, somebody that can do the engineering, and then maybe somebody for ops or some other side, related to the domain specific. Do you feel like that might change and you might have more solo founders who have more from a business background and then using AI and agents to do the technical side?
Definitely. I think that's absolutely a change that we're seeing a lot, right? And I think that kind of the first traces of that we've been able to see is, if you look at startups that are starting today, oftentimes, historically, the first hire in a startup is almost always 9 out of 10 times in the past was a founding engineer, right? Where, let's say you have 2 or 3 co-founders. Obviously, the first thing you would hire is somebody to help build product and somebody to help supercharge. But nowadays, I mean, it's fairly common. I mean, we're seeing, for example, the first hire in a startup might be a chief of staff, or it might be a founding go-to-market, or somebody to really kind of put the gas on more of the go-to-market and kind of the operational side of things, because product is no longer the bottleneck. So I think we're going to start to kind of see this model entirely change over time, where maybe, this is a guess, and I don't know if this is true, but maybe kind of, even the technical component, or kind of, the CTO type of, role in a startup might be more kind of productized, or it might be more not confined, but it might be more limited in scope than, let's say, everybody on the team has to be a hardcore engineer, and then somebody kind of selling this.
Okay, got it. So outside of CodeGen, you do a lot of AI investing. How do you think AI is going to transform the world over the next, let's say, 5 years?
Big questions. I love it. In so many ways. I think one of the coolest parts about my job is that I, get paid for a living to try to imagine what the world is going to be like, and to try to find companies that are building that vision. I think, one of the ways that I'm super excited that AI just can change the world is, we actually have this partner at Pair. He has this thesis about what's called privilege expansion, which I really, really like. And his name is Warren, and he runs a lot of our kind of, consumer investments, and kind of thinks about, what is consumer going to look like in the next 15 to 20 years. And this idea of privilege expansion, which I really, really like, is where, typically think of really high-end services, or kind of, things that are limited to folks with really, high means, are kind of being democratized with AI, right? And I mean, the first, way that you can easily see that is with education and kind of learning things, right? Traditionally, and actually this is kind of funny because it's coming full circle. I built that edtech app also back in the day, and that was before AI, and I ended up writing all that content by hand. But it's so funny because if I were to do that now, it would have taken me maybe like a day or two to build that entire app.
Claude Code, Cursor,
Exactly. So like this thesis around like privilege expansion is very cool, right? Because traditionally, like tutoring and services and all these things, you can use agents to give you a lot of that value today, right? I mean, you can expand this to so many different verticals. You can think of, really high-end matchmakers, which typically cost tens of thousands of dollars, which are commonly used in countries. You can have AI do a lot of those things, right? So in a lot of different ways, I think we're going to kind of see this interesting kind of balancing act where, right, in a lot of ways, the world is still moving towards, becoming more equal in a lot of ways, but also at the same time, there's different kind of forces which AI is pushing and kind of helping to bring this, broad technology that's really good at understanding unstructured and structured text, and kind of enabling different ways for people to see the world and get value through that in ways that we haven't seen before, which is interesting. And maybe I'll pause there because I feel like I'm kind of rambling.
No. I feel like you're right. EdTech and as these models get smarter and smarter, a lot of these application layer companies, whether that's in EdTech or basically any space, you want to be in a business where your product consistently just improves and gets better and better without you really needing to do anything. Obviously, you've got to do the work. I mean, that's still an important component, right? But the product itself will just, with the APIs, it will just constantly get better and better to the point where, who knows, we'll reach AGI. And now that term has got a shifting definition. At one point, it was, can it pass the Turing test? And we smashed through that at 3.5. Now with 5 imminent and around the corner, probably released before this podcast goes out. Who knows? I mean, everyone's got a different definition of AGI, but what I'm keen to find out from you is, do you think 10 years from now, we will have a universally agreed upon definition of AGI, which most people believe we have achieved?
I think we will in the next 10 years. I think we're gonna reach a moment in the next few years, I think likely, where we're gonna collectively as a society say that, hey, we've reached AGI, right? I mean, whether it's, specifically, there's a new model which comes out and says that, hey, this is, right, what we imagine to be generalized intelligence, or whether it's, right, to the point where kind of, we have orchestration, or we kind of build these general agent systems, which we feel kind of represents what we think of that. It's also kind of funny because in SF, it's one of the most popular questions when you meet somebody new. You'll ask, what's your AGI timeline?
Only in FF. Yeah, nowhere else in the world does it get asked. Yeah.
And it's crazy to hear kind of different folks' AGI timeline. I mean, it ranges anywhere from 2027 to 2030s or 2040s. But I think right. I mean, I'm generally more on the side of, I think things are gonna take a little bit of time to pan out. But do I think that within the next 10 years we're gonna have a moment where we all agree that AGI is here? I think so.
Yeah, I'm probably one of the very few who believes it kind of already is here, but it's just not evenly distributed yet. When I'm playing around with VO3 or Manus or some other insane tool, I mean, to me, it's hard to say it's not. I mean, I'm not going to say self-aware, but to the point where it's far more intelligent than any possible human can be. And look, there's so many limitations involved. I mean, our AI agent interviews thousands of candidates a day in 30 different languages. I mean, there's no recruiter on the planet that's as good as that, right? So that's AGI in my eyes. But I understand it's look, it will take a while until we have a universally agreed upon definition that everybody goes, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That's actually a really good point that I think is underappreciated actually when people think about AGI. Is that you're completely right. Right, there's these dimensions where AI is so superhuman, and I mean, processing large amounts of data and kind of doing these things. But then at the same time, there's places where AI can't learn from few samples, where humans have this incredible ability. So it's so interesting, and you're so right. There's different ways you can kind of look at this.
It's like the world's smartest 5-year-old or something. It's it's kind of crazy. Before all the AI stuff, you spent a little bit of time at Facebook and Google and NASA and so on. So look, some of these organizations, they have legendary founders, Zuck and Sergey and Larry Page. What do you think separates those people, that the sort of kings of industry, as opposed to all the other founders who most of them just don't make it?
Yeah, I mean, so much is timing, is luck, is these factors which really kind of you can't control. But I think, right, I mean, going back to kind of the vision piece, I think some of the other things that we've seen, or at least I've seen in my time, kind of right, working with startups and working with founders, is I think one, the ability to recruit really, really exceptional talent is so underappreciated, right? I think the ability to find the smartest people, to go to people who are doing the coolest things and say that, hey, you want to come work with me or join my mission and do what I'm doing, is incredible, right? I think one of the other things that's interesting, actually, specifically if you look at really large tech companies like Facebook or Google or whatnot, and this is interesting because actually I think this is changing over time, and it might not be the case anymore when you look at startups. But if you look at companies like those, there's still actually a fairly high percentage of folks who have been at those companies for really long tenures. So in a way, those people feel like they're like some version of a co-founder of that company, right? I mean, if there's like a distinguished engineer or somebody at Google who's been there for 15 years now, they've been there for probably, more than 99.9 something percent of the company's lifetime, and kind of the number of employees who have been there. So I think that actually that ability to build a really strong culture where you feel really tied to the company, even if you're, a 1,000th employee or something like that, is really, really powerful. And that's kind of, it's less about startups. It's more about kind of large organizational change. But that ability, I think, comes from the top, right? Because that ability comes from leaders setting a vision where the entire company feels really bought into. And I think during my time there at Facebook, I definitely felt that. At Google, I felt that as well. So been lucky to have really good leadership, I think, too.
The two, if I did like a word gram on what you've been saying during this episode, the two words that which keep coming up are vision and people. And I love that because, I mean, it's so true at the end of the day. Like the founder, the co-founders, they need to have a bold, ambitious, crazy idea which is directionally correct, but probably isn't correct right now, but in 3-5 years from now it will be. And they just need the right people who believe in them, who can fund that and get the business to the point where it's got the mind share in the market. So when that moment happens, the tech suddenly works, the customers already know who they are, boom, you got success. But in order to do that, you got to have the right people, right? You can't just hire anyone. You've got to have the smartest and most talented people in the room. And it's so key. And most people, they maybe might be good at the vision, but they suck at getting the right people, or they've got a great team, but they're not working on the right problem. Like, it's so hard to get both of them right. But I think you've summed it up pretty perfectly.
Yeah. And I think that's why, like, my also, if founders are asking me, like, who should I work with, or like, how do I find a co-founder? Like, I'm always like, just work with your best friends, or work with people who you really like working with, people who you know, or people who you think are really smart, or who you look up to, because ultimately those are the people who you want to be working with, right? I mean, sure, you could find a co-founder, but I think I would always recommend work with somebody that you know and like and trust and would genuinely have a good time working with.
And so many co-founders, like, they break up in the first or the second year. So if you've got a friend and you've been through difficult things with them, and like you know who each other are deep down, like, you're much less likely to break up if you're just meetings. Like, when I do angel investing, like, it's like the first question I ask, I'm like, how long have you guys known each other? Like if the answer is like less than a year, it's probably not going to work out. Of course, there's exceptions, many times. Sometimes the most successful people in the world are the exceptions. That's why they're the exception to the rule. But generally speaking, you're right. Like, you want to work with people that you know, that you like, that you trust, and that you've been with them for many years before.
Yeah, definitely. Which is also so interesting because, it's like you always have that group of friends that are like, let's start something, and then they're always kind of talking about it. But yeah.
Cool. Ankur, this has been really useful for people that want to learn about AI, building companies, investing. If people have enjoyed this and they want to find out more about you, where do they go? X, LinkedIn, the fund's website? Where should people go right now?
Yes, absolutely. Hit me up on X. I'm at x.com/AnkurKJain. Feel free to also send me a request on LinkedIn. Reach out to me over email. My email is ankur@pair.vc. Would love to chat if anyone's building something cool in AI startups, or if just anyone is working on something or has fun projects to share. Always down to check out what's exciting.
Amazing. All right. Thank you, sir.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alfie.
Thank you so much for watching. Make sure that you click the follow or subscribe button wherever you're watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.
Introducing Lisa, the world's first AI-powered recruiter. She's an AI agent who works 24/7, screening candidates on autopilot, conducting interviews in 30 different languages, uploading all the best candidates to your applicant tracking system. Hire 10 times faster at 90% lower cost, and significantly improve the candidate experience. Visit welovealpha.com to start your free trial now.